Let me tell you something that young men, and frankly young women as well, desperately need to hear. When someone doesn't respond the way you want them to, it doesn't always mean they're rejecting you. It certainly doesn't mean they're out to hurt you. And it almost never means they're trying to make a personal attack on your value. Rejection is not always a statement. It's often a projection. You see silence and think it screams against your worth, but it's often just the sound of someone else's struggle. We assume too quickly that every lack of attention is a verdict on our value, when it's more often a mirror reflecting our own insecurity. Human communication is imperfect, filtered through layers of fear, trauma, fatigue, and noise, and yet we treat every unread message as if it were carved in stone by divine judgment. We don't pause to consider that maybe she didn't respond because she's anxious, or tired, or overwhelmed, or simply unaware of how much weight you've placed on her answer. You gave a moment and expected the universe to echo back approval. But human beings don't operate on your internal timeline. You're not rejected, you're misaligned. When you fixate on her silence, you reveal more about your own internal chaos than about her intentions. The truth is, most people are far too caught up in their own confusion to be calculating enough to reject you deliberately. You're not the center of her narrative. She's navigating storms you know nothing about. When you interpret distance as hostility, you reduce her complexity to a caricature and crown your ego as the only truth. It is easier to feel rejected than to sit with the reality that you simply don't understand her inner world. Her non-response might have nothing to do with you. She could be mourning something you never saw, wrestling with pain you can't name, burdened by roles she never asked for, emotionally exhausted from battles you never witnessed, and yet you make it about you. That's not awareness. That's entitlement. If her presence isn't constant, you call it betrayal. But what if her silence is survival? You are not entitled to constant affirmation. You are not owed engagement. If you cannot tolerate ambiguity, you will constantly create your own pain. When she retreats, you rush to fill the silence with your worst fears rather than with patience, understanding, or humility. You create rejection out of raw air. You build a villain in her image because it's easier than confronting your own fear of being unseen. We often crave connection, not because we love, but because we ache to be validated. And the moment we don't receive it, we cast the other person as cruel, distant, or cold. But maybe she's not rejecting you. Maybe she's preserving herself. Maybe she's not turning away from you, but turning inward to face demons that have nothing to do with you. And you have no right to demand entry into a war you don't understand. We romanticize responsiveness as proof of love and silence as proof of scorn. But the human psyche is far more complicated than your instant messaging expectations. Attention isn't love, and delay isn't neglect. She may be fighting shame, doubt, confusion, or simply apathy, not about you, but about her own sense of being. And you, uninvited, write your own tragedy on the canvas of her absence. You are not rejected. You are not dismissed. You are not hated. You are simply not the sole orbiting mass in the galaxy of her life. When you make someone's behavior your mirror, you are no longer seeing them. You are only seeing yourself reflected through your fears. That's not intimacy. That's projection. And it's dangerous. To truly connect, you must be willing to not be the center. You must be willing to not know. You must be willing to interpret less and observe more. But interpretation feeds the ego. You want the story that hurts because it proves you matter. If she's hurting you, then at least she's thinking about you, but she may not be. And that's not cruelty. It's independence. It's boundaries. It's the reality that not every moment is about you. This doesn't make your feelings invalid, but it makes your assumptions deeply suspect. You are constructing rejection like a house of cards, fragile, imbalanced, and likely to collapse under the slightest breeze of truth, because truth doesn't always feel like clarity. Sometimes truth feels like being ignored, when in fact you were never being addressed in the first place. What you call rejection is often emotional static. It's noise in the signal of two humans trying to navigate their own worlds with faulty instruments. She might not know what to say. She might fear saying the wrong thing. She might be doubting herself more than you'll ever know. But you interpret that as abandonment because it's easier than accepting ambiguity. Your pain isn't always proof. Sometimes it's projection. She's not a character in your validation script. She's not here to complete your arc. She's not ignoring you to punish you. She may not even be thinking about you. And that's not a moral failure. That's autonomy. The expectation that others must clarify their silence for your comfort is a form of control disguised as vulnerability. Every missed response is not a slight. Every delay is not disdain. You are interpreting emotional weather as if it were a verdict, and it isn't. She is a world of unseen influences, just like you. To reduce her to a reaction or a refusal is to rob her of her humanity and inflate your own sense of centrality. When you assume malice from absence, you poison the well of connection before it's even had a chance to fill. You rush to judgment not because she failed you, but because you failed to sit still in uncertainty. That's not strength, that's fear in disguise. You're not asking for love, you're begging for control. There's no power in assuming rejection where there is only silence. There's no wisdom in seeing yourself as the victim of every unmet need. There's no growth in turning someone else's complexity into your personal crisis. The silence might not be a message, it might just be space. And space is not the enemy. You keep saying she's ignoring you, but maybe you're ignoring reality. Reality is messy. People are distracted, burdened, confused, guarded, and no one owes you the clarity that you haven't earned through deep presence and deep listening. You want a clean explanation for human behavior in a world of broken compasses. Sometimes silence is grace. Sometimes it's confusion. Sometimes it's protection, but it is not always an accusation. You can either learn to dwell with patience inside that ambiguity, or you can keep manufacturing rejection out of thin air. One path leads to resilience, the other leads to resentment. If you need her to constantly confirm your worth, then you've already abandoned your own. And that's the tragedy. Not that she's ignoring you, but that you made her the only voice that could convince you that you matter. And that is far too much to ask of anyone. You cannot demand truth from others when you lie to yourself every day. You cannot fix relationships when you refuse to confront your own chaos. Responsibility begins not when you try to manage someone else's reactions, but when you finally take ownership of your own patterns, your fears, your inadequacies, and your contributions to the mess. Most people want control, not understanding. They want others to respond in ways that make them feel safe, rather than becoming strong enough to face discomfort. They script outcomes and call it love, but it's manipulation wrapped in emotional dependency. You think you're being vulnerable when you're actually being demanding. You disguise your insecurity as romantic expectation and wonder why it fails. You want her to show up consistently, but you're not consistent with yourself. You want someone to validate you, yet you've built your identity on fragments of avoidance and ego. You ask for loyalty before you've earned trust. You project your wounds as warnings and wonder why people keep walking away. You aren't a victim of her distance, you're a product of your own lack of clarity. People chase control when they haven't developed character. They would rather possess someone than become someone worth being with. They mistake obedience for affection and predictability for intimacy. They believe that love is about getting what you want instead of becoming who you need to be. You do not deserve peace until you face your chaos. You say she's distant, but you're disconnected from yourself. You say she's confusing, but you haven't done the inner work to recognize the difference between being loved and being needed. You've built an emotional economy that collapses when someone stops feeding your ego. That isn't her fault. That's your unfinished self speaking. The foundation of every authentic relationship is responsibility, not over the other person, but over yourself. Not what they do or don't do, but who you become regardless. You are not the sculptor of their reactions. You are the architect of your own integrity. Until you know that, everything you touch will fracture. You will never find stability in someone else if your soul is still scattered. You will never build something real if you're still addicted to controlling the narrative. You think that if you just say it right, act right, or push hard enough, they'll change. but real power comes when you no longer need them to. You're not ready for love if your version of love requires someone else to change so you can avoid your own discomfort. You're not mature if you use emotional intensity as a mask for psychological laziness. You're not evolved if your identity depends on the actions of people who don't even know themselves. Stop asking how to make her see your worth and start asking why your worth depends on her seeing it. Stop waiting for her response and start responding to your own dysfunction. She's not the answer, she's the mirror. And you don't like what you see because it reflects everything you haven't confronted. If you want peace, earn it by facing the war inside your mind. If you want connection, build it through truth, not tactics. If you want respect, become someone whose actions are aligned with purpose, not desperation. There is no shortcut to depth. There is no hack for maturity. You want her to commit, but you haven't committed to yourself. You want her to be present, but you're lost in fantasy. You want her to open up, but you haven't earned her trust through consistency, integrity, and strength. Strength is not loud. Strength is not control. Strength is not performance. Strength is presence under pressure. It is calm in conflict. It is honesty without agenda. You are not entitled to emotional safety at the expense of truth. You are not entitled to connection while staying disconnected from your own reality. You are not entitled to influence without introspection. Every demand you place externally reveals an absence of development internally. That's the principle. That's the burden. That's the way. People want love without transformation. They want affirmation without accountability. They want to be chosen without first becoming someone worth choosing. That's not how this works. That's not how anything meaningful endures. You don't get what you want until you become what you lack. The moment you stop trying to shape others is the moment you start shaping yourself. The moment you stop reacting to their silence is the moment you start hearing your own voice. The moment you stop expecting them to fix the cracks is the moment you finally pick up the hammer and start rebuilding. Her unpredictability is not your prison. Your dependency is. Her distance is not your enemy. Your fragility is. Her confusion is not your obstacle. Your avoidance of self-examination is. Blaming her is easy. Taking responsibility feels like death, but it's actually rebirth. It's the beginning of sovereignty. You think clarity comes from their explanation, but it actually comes from your excavation. Dig into your beliefs. Question your motives. Track the roots of your pain, not because you are broken, but because you are blind. And blindness repeated becomes destruction. The deepest suffering is caused not by others, but by our refusal to see our role in our own patterns. You're not abandoned, you're repeating a wound. You're not unloved, you've mistaken codependency for closeness. You're not misunderstood, you've never truly expressed yourself without armor. There is no growth in playing the victim. There is no healing in blaming the world for your emptiness. There is no meaning in waiting for someone to rescue you from the responsibilities you keep avoiding. The path forward is brutal, honest, and personal, and no one can walk it but you. Stop trying to convince her. Start confronting yourself. Stop performing and start becoming. Stop managing perception and start cultivating substance. The answers don't lie in her attention. They lie in your discipline, in your values, in your structure, in the quiet rituals of self-respect when no one is watching. You are not here to possess others. You are here to master yourself. You are not here to extract validation. You are here to embody purpose. You are not here to complain about the absence of love. You are here to generate it from within and offer it without strings. Control is the language of the weak. Responsibility is the path of the strong. And until you stop speaking in terms of blame, you will never learn the grammar of transformation.